Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
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 Good day again, viewers. Welcome to the program Agriculture on the Move. My name is Philip Sidney, your host. Today we have a very interesting discussion, and with me in studio is a well-known doctor to St. Lucia, and of course he's no other than Dr. Owen Gabriel, who is an oncologist, and of course he specializes in diagnosing and treating cancer. Welcome to the program, sir.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I know you're very, very busy. I know, it takes some effort for you to be here today.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Owen, I'm happy you are here because it has always troubled me from many, many years ago where cancer is so very prevalent in this country. Mm-hmm. And for me, as a layman, I really don't know why. I don't know where it's coming from, our foods we consume. We have a tagline in the ministry called Eat Fresh, St. Lucia's Best. That is, we try to get us to eat locally produced foods. Are they safe? We don't know. Anyway, what I would like you I would like to ask you, tell us exactly what is cancer in our layman way of understanding.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I like that preamble. So, cancer is the classification that we give to over 200 diseases now of when cells no longer conform to the normal process of growth, development, and automatic cell death. So these cells multiply over and over, and there's billions of cells, and eventually they form a tumor in the majority of cases. So we are aware that cancer can affect any part of your body, but we are aware that the causes are, most people believe they are genetic causes, and a few of them are genetic causes. But in the majority, we know that cancers are caused primarily by lifestyle behaviors, and as well as environmental factors. So this is agriculture on the move. So I'm sure we will delve into those aspects where some of these environmental factors that may affect us. But certainly in terms of lifestyle, our food, the smoking habit, the consumption of alcohol, and the lack of exercise. Those are the principal variables influencing the development of cancer.
What are the most common cancers?
Yes, absolutely. So in St. Lucia, and this seems to sort of mimic the rest of the world, in men, prostate cancer is prevalent in St. Lucia as the #1 cause of cancer in men. Cancer incidence and mortality for cancer. Breast cancer, #1 in incidence and mortality in St. Lucia for women, although men get breast cancer, but in a very minimal amount. But we have cervical cancer in women as well, very common in our country. And for both sexes, we have the colorectal cancers, cancer of the colon, cancers of the bowel, cancers of the stomach, the gastrointestinal cancer. So these are the more prevalent ones we have in our country. But of course we have cancer of the lung, cancer of the skin, cancer of the pancreas, cancer of the ovaries, cancer of endometrium. But those I mentioned earlier are the ones that we deal with and that are wreaking havoc in our healthcare system.
Over the years, in terms of if you're rating in terms of percentage, can you say that where we are today, we have the prevalence of cancer more now than yesterday?
I would certainly think so. And whilst we have very scarce data to prove the point, but what we see in the clinics is that we've had an increase in our cancer cases.
Wow.
And I would say that this is the trend that we see around the world. You know, certainly we just celebrated Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. And what we know in the 1970s, breast cancer affected 1 in 13 women in the United States.
Wow.
And now it's 1 in 8.
It's rising.
So there's an increase. Now that also follows an increase in what I would say is industrialization.
Okay.
Industrialization in terms of the production of synthetics, the contamination of the environment with all our chemicals and the byproducts of industrial production.
Yes.
The use of a large-scale agricultural production as well. It has led to the use of pesticides.
Correct.
So, you know, so I think the trend is that as we have become more sophisticated in producing man-made products and increasing our food production, we have also exposed ourselves to more contaminants, what we now call cancer-causing substances called carcinogens.
Yes, carcinogens, yes.
Carcinogens.
Yes. And the processing of our foods.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Can you say in St. Lucia, where do you think that we have the prevalence of cancer more?
Yes.
Because I asked the question because I remember some years ago, some people are saying there is an area which is referred to as the poorest of the poor, and it means that they cannot afford to buy the foods that are nutritious. So they probably would eat what they can, what the pocket can afford. And it was said that when they eat, the imported chicken backs, they said that's one of the reasons why cancer was so prevalent in that particular area.
Yes.
So that's why I asked the question.
Yeah. So there are universal trends as well. For instance, we know that breast cancer tends to affect persons of a higher socioeconomic level.
Okay.
Whereas cervical cancer, as you mentioned earlier on, tends to affect persons of a bracket that has less access to resources.
Right.
So in terms of countries, cervical cancer tends to affect Latin American countries. The poorer portions of the world. I mean, Haiti was once put up as one of the highest levels of cervical cancer because of its poverty. So we see that those kinds of trends also manifesting in our country, so to speak. So, but we do have a larger proportion of cancers in the capital of St. Lucia, certainly in the north. Groseilliers, Castries, and so on. Albeit in the urban centers of the country, show higher levels.
But why?
Well, I mean, unless we do proper research, I can only speculate as to why we have those kinds of numbers and trends. I would say that as far as lifestyle is concerned, for instance, in urban centers, people are more sedentary. There's the consumption of foods that are ultra processed.
Yes, I mentioned.
Rather than from farm to table type of situations that you may have in the rural communities. Somebody might produce their own backyard food and the farmers are in the rural areas. So you probably have less processing products. In the urban centers, more access to the large commercial centers, the supermarkets and so on. So I mean, I'm just speculating. But we could do some research to prove this point.
I think so, because, for example, you mentioned the rural areas where it might be less contaminants, but don't forget the farmers are using pesticides. Of course, from the ministry standpoint, we guide them.
Yes.
Okay. Some of the farmers maybe cannot read and write, and there's a special dosage for the use of the. Some of the farmers probably would, because of the cost of the chemical, they would use, because it's very expensive, they would use a lesser dose, and they don't understand you cannot do that.
That's right.
Or the opposite. They use a higher dose, especially in leafy vegetables like lettuce. Okay, sadly to say, if the farmer is planting lettuce, maybe from 5 or 6 leaves, you can't consume it, but then you allow it to get a bit, bigger. All right, but then he will spray that lettuce, and then maybe 2 days after that, he'll get a call from a market, and because he has an opportunity, he will harvest it. And what are you doing? The thing is laced with chemicals. So again, I don't know what it does. I don't know if it gives cancer. Maybe you can
absolutely. So I mean, there are large studies that from the use of DDT.
Yes.
From in the 1948 after the Second World War.
They banned that. Yes.
That's right.
Yes,
banned in So I mean, albeit I think there are some pesticides. Now pesticides is an interesting concept because pesticides are a broad range of. They are insecticides, they are fungicides, rodenticides,
nematicides, and the list goes on.
So in the urban centers we use lots of rodenticides. Detergents can be considered pesticides as well, and we use lots of that. I mean, the WHO has designated certain household chemicals that we use as carcinogens. So, I mean, there's the exposure, and there was once a study that we did called CAREX, carcinogen exposure, to look at the exposure of the common person to some of these carcinogens, unknowingly, because when we clean our homes with our cleaning products, our detergents and disinfectants, we don't think that we are exposing ourselves to carcinogens, but certainly that is the case in some cases. And, it just stands to reason, like in 2013, I think it was, in St. Lucia, we conducted a study to look at the exposure of something called persistent organic pollutants.
Right.
POPs.
Yeah, okay.
And what we did with some of the nurses in the community, we took women in their 3rd trimester of pregnancy, took their blood samples to measure the presence of some of these agrochemicals, as well as heavy metals like lead, mercury, and so on, which are toxic to the human being. And this study came about initially from the University of Laval in Canada, because they found that in women who had children with malformations, congenital malformations, learning deficiencies, antisocial behavior, cancers, delinquency, they were able to trace the presence of some of these persistent organic pollutants that came through the fish, went into the person consumed the fish, in the fatty layer of the fish, it gets into the blood, then it gets into the breast milk, and it gets into the baby. So sometimes the violence we're seeing in our societies could be attributable in some respect to some of that exposure that we may have. And I'm sure you're aware that in the terms of transmission of these chemicals, there's bioaccumulation, which means once it comes from one level, it goes to the primary consumer, and then there's there's bioaugmentation. Okay. So the concentration increases as the consumers increase, from secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. So by the time it gets to the human being, it is highly concentrated, although it was initially produced at a level in the bottles that would not be toxic to human beings, so to speak, to handle it. So there are things that we need to look at, and there was once an attempt to measure that in some of our farmers, but that study never occurred. We had a study plan to measure by taking buccal swabs to measure the levels of toxicity that they may and their families would have been exposed to, because they are in close contact with some of these chemicals. But there are things to be done here, and we know the impact, and hence the rise in probably cancer cases in our country.
And that goes to the farmer or his worker in the application of chemicals. The PPEs are not being used. Okay, so he doesn't have his hat, his goggles, his respirator, his overalls, his gloves. All right, he has nothing like this, and he's spraying that. So I mean, the skin, of course, all right, absorbs this.
That's right.
Okay, so what happens? So are we aware if he's sick tomorrow or maybe 10 years later and gets cancer, can we safely say it's from that?
That's right, and we've had cases where we've been able to tie persons' occupations.
Right.
Those kinds of exposures. I mean, I'm also referring to people who do body work on cars.
Yes.
And painters who do these things without the protective interventions that the PPEs and so on, the masks and so on. And we have had certain cancers that we could tie into occupational hazards,
yes.
and so on.
Yes.
So it's something we need to look into.
But even the aerosol, I mean, I remember as a little boy, you know, they have those aerosols now that it is scented.
Yes.
You know, I am not knowing this as a youngster, spraying this thing, and I was staying and I watch television. And I'm exposed to this thing because I'm inhaling it.
That's right.
In my eyes,
Yes. I mean, I think there have been regulations in all over the world to try to contain some of this exposure, but maybe it's not enough because lots of us, we're unaware of the dangers of that kind of exposure. I mean, just the household items, how many people know what in the kitchen cabinets, you know, the pantries, what there could be toxic to them and their children under the circumstances?
The foods that we import. Okay, for example, our broilers are grown here. I mean, we have those plants here, and I know that we do not, in the feed, we do not have antibiotics and, you know, steroids and this. But then the meats, the chicken that we import, it has these things, you know.
Yes.
My thinking here, okay, is there some way we can prevent this from coming in?
Yes.
How?
Well, I know there's a regulatory authority now, I think, that looks at, you know, some of these toxic substances, that some of which have been banned in first world countries that may still enter our country. So there should be some sort of commission or committee or board that looks into, you know, especially our Bureau of Standards, I think, also has a role to play in sort of curtailing the importation of some of these very harmful food items and so on.
So what are the preventative measures that can be put in place to ensure that, you know, we do not consume those foods that are amplified with toxic chemicals?
Yes. Yeah, also a very good area of concern here. You know, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I grew up at a time, and I think this is relevant. We have changed our eating habits and our lifestyle. So I grew up at the time that you walked to school, you walked back home from school. In essence, the human being is a person where we eat minimally and we always on the go. But with modernization, we now in our vehicles, we at our desks and at our offices, and we now depend on canned foods, packaged foods. We feed our children all these ultra processed foods, rather than, at least in my time, when you ate at home, you would have gone to the market on a weekend, purchased the ground provisions, purchased the farm produce, freshly produced foods, and you prepare that. I think we need to take stock of the situation that we're in and try to go back, trying to consume as, you know, as fresh. I forgot your
Eat fresh and Lucia's best.
Absolutely, eat fresh and Lucia's best. This is what I think we should try to achieve, and it's a personal choice. But I think the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Agriculture all have a role to play in inculcating healthy habits, healthy behavior, in terms of trying to get healthy eating on board and other protective interventions.
So, moving forward, how is it education for the public? Is that the way to go now?
I think it's the way to start off. I mean, and you know, there's a method. You know, they studied people who are the healthy people around the world. I've always been interested in the happiness index and you know, around the world, and the centenarians, the majority I think are found in Okinawa. Part of Japan and so on. So, you know, they have studied these groups of people to see what is it that they do that allows them to have longevity in their lives. And they have found that in the eating habits and the way they live their lives, these are the most important factors influencing health and longevity. So, minimal processed foods, if any at all, as well as trying to consume foods in their natural state of affairs. In the natural state of affairs. So, as well as the balance of foods, veggies, proteins, and carbohydrates in the least amount. Now, there's a concept in the Japanese tradition, Hara Hanchi Bun, I think it's called, where you look at not just what you eat, how much you eat, but how you consume it.
Okay.
So, for instance, there's a question of we tend to eat foods that are cold. And if you're cooking anything on the stove, if you put something cold in a pot that's boiling, it will slow down the process.
Yes.
The pot has to restart its boiling.
To get to that
Same thing happens in your stomach. So you've eaten some food and then you have a glass of cold water or some cold juice. The enzymes have to restart the process, because we know that human beings process things. The best nutrition extraction is at body temperature. So when you eat things that are colder, then it leads to less absorption, it leads to changes in enzyme pHs and so on and so on. So we don't consume things in the way that we should, so to speak. And those centenarians tend to, the first thing they do, for instance, is have a glass of warm water first thing in the morning. And that has a very important impact. Because when you sleep at night, your body regenerates cells. So the toxins from that process of using byproducts of regenerating cells have to be flushed out. And what you do when you consume that warm water, it jump starts the body, something called the gastrocolic reflex, where it allows your body to cleanse out all those toxins instead of reabsorbing them and accumulating them. And it sets your body to meet the food consumption at that time. It triggers the enzymes to start off. It's sort of like a reflex. Your body goes into that metabolism that allows you to process at the natural and the most efficient manner possible. And then when we consume foods, we say to people the best way is to have green colored vegetables, the five colors, the reds with the lycopenes, the greens with the chlorophylls, the phytonutrients that are all in yellow vegetables, the purple, the reds, we know the tomatoes, the carrots, the beta carotenes, all have impacts on your health. And we know that they reduce cancer, the rates of cancer. They reduce depression. They reduce osteoporosis, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and so on. And they increase lifespans, reduce mortality overall. So we say consume veggies first. And the veggies do a number of things. First thing, the fiber expands your stomach. So in your bowels, you have less the satiety. You want to eat less. Secondly, they create a mesh that prevents the influx of carbohydrates. So you don't have a spike of sugar. And when you have a spike of sugar, then you have insulin. And that decreases your insulin sensitivity. And when that happens, it's a domino effect. It's a domino effect. So then you consume, secondly, proteins. And we now know there's such a hormone called GLP-1, which is a hormone that helps the stomach to promote emptying and helps to regulate insulin and insulin sensitivity, thereby helping your body nourish itself in a better way. And finally, you consume your carbohydrates. Now in St. Lucia, we do the reverse. When we go to those buffets, what you see are the starches, your lasagna and your macaroni and cheese and your ground provisions and so on, your rice, and so starches all the way. Then you might get some proteins, and at the very end, you have the veggies, the salads, and so on. So we do it in the reverse. True. And there's a lesson to be learned in eating in the right way and the right things and how we consume them. And I think this is something we have to inculcate in our children, so that as they grow older, they keep those healthy habits, and then we have a healthier population, so to speak.
Do you think that we are really on the path of educating the populace, especially the kids from the school level? Because at some of the activities I have, I always bring in the schools. And when it comes to the culinary aspect, I mean, they are outstanding, okay? But that is, for me, just one level.
Yes.
I'm thinking here, where is the healthy, element of it to take it to the next
Right.
one? Because they are now adults of tomorrow, okay? What do we do?
Absolutely. So I think it's also important to educate parents.
Yes.
And educate our healthcare providers.
Yes, yes.
Because some of the instructions and some of the advice that we give, sometimes we don't get it from our nurses and our doctors who are the ones that, maybe need to advise us. People say for health-seeking behavior, to change behavior, people believe their doctors more than maybe an educator from the Ministry of Health. So if your doctor or your nurse or your healthcare provider says something to you, people tend to adopt those instructions better than if somebody else does it. So we need to get on the same page. It has to be something that is multi-sectoral and something that has all stakeholders involved in the process. Because it can't just be trying to educate the kids, it has to be reinforced at home.
Yes.
So the parents need to be educators as well.
Yeah.
And when you get out into the workplace, then the workplace has to provide the avenue for persons to consume food properly, have the breaks, relieve stress, exercise maybe, all these other things that happen in your 8 to 4, so to speak, and then beyond when you get back home. What do? Sleep. That time of fasting when you are asleep. The centenarians and the Japanese have a 12 to 14 hour time of fasting where the body needs to regenerate itself and get, repair the damaged cells. So it's important to have a fully outlined plan of healthy existence.
But sometimes, what I notice at the supermarkets, the kids have that influence on the parents, they want the junk food.
Yeah.
They will not buy a banana for them to consume. And this is one of the things that I think the ministry and government is trying to do soon, is to have a school child to eat a banana a day, island-wide, okay? We need to start somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think the first example of that was an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Well, now it's a banana a day.
And that was a Western, philosophy.
Yes.
Why not say a banana a day?
Yes.
As the staple food that we need to get our children to eat fruits. And we want people to eat maybe a different colored fruit every day of the 5 colors and so on. The veggies, have consumptions of fruits and veggies, as many servings as you possibly can.
But the farmer now, because the consumers are very smart now, okay? They know what's happening at the farm level, okay, in terms of the chemicals that are used to control pests and diseases, okay? There's supposed to be a withdrawal period after you spray, 14 to 17 days before your harvest. Are they doing that? You understand? So even it is locally produced, but then you need to be careful and to know exactly what you're buying. We are encouraging to eat fresh St. Lucia's best, and to prevent them from eating the foreign stuff a bit less. Yes. But then we now have to be concerned about what we produce.
Absolutely. I'm not sure how you can police the production of food in St. Lucia.
It's a very serious thing.
That's right.
Another scary part of it is predial larceny.
Yes.
So the farmer just spray his crop, and the larcenist will go there and he'll harvest before it's really mature.
That's right.
And he harvests the sweet pepper. Sweet pepper is being sold at maybe about $30 a pound, and at the end of the day, you only sell it to me for $5. Something is wrong, but you see because it's cheap, right. But you don't know what you're buying. Your health matters there.
Absolutely.
And then tomorrow, 10 days later or a few months later, you come down with some illness, and colon cancer. We don't know where.
That's right.
Any final words from you to tell the farmer, the consumer exactly, in 1 minute what to do?
Well, I think we need to develop a national health program, so to speak, that looks at all the stakeholders and targets all the population at risk, whether it's our children, our parents, our educators, our healthcare providers. Something has to be, there needs to be a wholesome
holistic
plan.
approach, yeah.
As you said, a holistic approach to addressing health, healthy eating, healthy habits, healthy lifestyles. And this is the only way, I think, if it has to have funding, it has to have some sort of infrastructure that allows for people to go into different sectors and do what they have to do.
Great. Owen, thanks for being here. I think it was short and sweet.
That's right.
We'll have to do it again because we need to stamp it
Absolutely.
and ram it down.
Absolutely.
You know. By the way, those of you who don't know, that's family here. I'm sure I look better than him, right? You know? So don't call me. That's my nephew if you don't know.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you for viewing the program, and of course remember, agriculture is our business, and eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. The money stays here, and your health is more important. Thank you again, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.